Hi everyone, we're reading Chapter 8 of Del Toro Moon by Darby Carshut. Saddle up! We gathered in the yard. I waited in the shade of the barn, twirling my mace by its leather strap, nervous as a kid on the sidelines waiting to be picked for the team. Roman's words circled around in my skull. A true man. What did that mean? Did a guy have to be a certain age? Tougher than other guys? Did it all happen at once? Or would I just wake up one day and bam, there I was. I shook myself. Get your head in the game. I watched his dad swung up on Elsid. It was weird seeing him mounted on the gray. I reminded myself that they had hunted together longer than I'd been alive. Matt? Ben leaned down from Izzy, and I bipped up on the back of my head. Move it. Trying and bipped me on the back of the head, sorry. Move it. Trying to be graceful, I clambered up and settled on the sorrel's haunch behind the cantel. Naturally, I'd managed to kick her. Sorry, Izzy. No worries. Nice to have you along. Thanks. I re-looped my mace's straps around my right wrist, in spite of the day's heat. A chill rattle snaked up my spine. I couldn't believe sorry, I got a little lost. Couldn't believe I was going back to the maze, swallowing through a mouth that was plains dry. I wish I had time to run back inside for a water bottle. So, Javier, you have a particular goal for today? Roman leaned forward, crossed forearms resting on Turk's neck. His mace hung from the saddle horn, longer and heavier than mine. The weapon looked like something from a medieval torture chamber. Short, stubby knots stuck out from the massive ball. I couldn't see them, but I knew the ball was marked with the Navarre signal, link chains, crisscrossing each other to form an 8-point starburst. Today, stroking his goatee, Dad studied me and Ben mounted on the Izzy. Today we will be in an in and out mission only, to see if more Skinners are escaping from the coffers. Hopefully, we will not meet too many of them along the way. And if more of those meat creatures are getting out, Ben asked, then what? Not to make you mad again, but our old way. He made quotes in the air with his fingers. Doesn't seem to be working too good. Dad's jaw clenched. A twitch of his finger on the reins. Then Elsid wheeled around with an angry slash of his tail and bore him away. Roman eyed my brother, his expression frosty. Ben noticed it too. What? I was just saying. You know, muchacho, you might try giving your old man a break once in a while. Without another word, he and Turk trotted after Dad. My brother sat motionless for a long moment. One word, he said over his shoulder, and you're walking. Traveling in a single file, we rounded the hump in silence and followed the dirt road east toward Hufferano, the afternoon sun at our backs. Z swung her head from side to side, eyes wide and ears in constant motion. Dust rose in the cloud from the horse's hooves and floated around us. Fine as cinnamon, I ground my teeth on the grit. After about a mile and a half, the horses turned their noses northward, and we were headed towards the maze. Picking up the pace, they trotted along a sandy trail, sidewinding along the bush. With each stride, the walls grew higher, all black gates of mortarish, and with each stride, dread welled up in me to match. Ben, I prodded him on the back. How are we going to seal up the gopher if it's leaking more? Got me last year. Got me. Last year I suggested pouring a couple of tons of wet concrete over the thing. Would that work? Even if it did, which Dad doubts, we can't get a mixer truck close enough to the cave. Heck, we can't even get an ATV back there. Neither of us said the other reason we didn't use all-terrain vehicles. An ATV wouldn't stand its ground and fight hoof and tooth for its rider. Or in Dad's case, when he was about Ben's age, sacrifice her life. We reached the gate, too soon for my taste. Elsid and Izzy sported dark patches of sweat on their necks and bellies, which Turk's coat gleamed like ice-covered asphalt. We halted just outside the dark opening. A breeze kicked up and ruffled my hair. A shadow drifted overhead, then another. I looked westward. Uh-oh. Clouds thick and gray, as Elsid were snagged on the jagged tops of the range. Even as I watched, they crept in slow motion down the mountainside. Dos. Dios? Dos? Sorry. Dad sighed, eyes narrowed. He studied the growing storm. Bad time for rain. Why? Izzy asked. With rain comes lightning, he said, and we are all carrying these. He held up his iron mace. Oh, flattening her ears, she lowered her head and peered westward too. We must hurry, Roman Clark clucked at Turt. Side by side, we rode an extended trot through the gate's shadows. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I pretended it was because of the cooler air. The only sound was an echoing clink of the steel horseshoes on the gravel and the sigh of the wind through the narrow passage. I reached out a hand and ran my fingertips across the sandstone wall for luck. My brother did the same thing. I rode back, tensed and my shoulders hunched, until we reached the end of the corridor and paused in the shade. So far, so good. I peered around Ben. I hadn't gotten a good look on Saturday, too busy trying to stay alive. Now I studied the area more closely. Below the horse's hooves, the terrain sloped down a short incline before hitting the valley's floor. The faint remains of a dirt road, overgrown and barely usable, wound through massive boulders scattered about. Small, scrubby bushes and clumps of prairie grass poked out between the rocks. What's that? I pointed. About 100 yards off to the side, a pile of collapsed timbers and what looked like a sheet of tin roofing sat abandoned. Did someone live in here? My voice cracked with surprise. A group of paleontologists did for a few months in the mid-1940s. Dad gazed at the ruined cabin. As you know, this region in Colorado is rich in dinosaur fossils, but it ended badly one night and the authorities shut down the dig. Ended badly? Like Skinner badly? I tried to imagine living in that cabin, oblivious to what was coming for me out of the darkness. Worse, no weapon to defend myself. The skin between my shoulders prickled. I heard they ate most of the scientists, Ben said. The one or two that made it out claimed a pack of rabid wolves that attacked the camp. Hasn't been any digs in here since. I thought back to the newspaper article. Sure hope that it stays that way, because I knew Dad would do whatever it took to keep the people safe from those monsters. Would I? Well, Dad and Roman spoke in low tones. I looked around, then nudged Ben again. Do you know where the coffer is hidden? Yeah, Dad showed me one. Yeah, Dad showed me one last year. It's in a cave at the end of a slot canyon over the northeast corner. The entrance is hidden behind a large chunk of sandstone. And just so you know, it's a tight fit back there. How tight? My heart flipped over with a thud. Small places, and I had a hate/hate relationship. Too narrow for a horse. It gets worse. How much worse? You have to crawl through a hole to get into the cave that holds the coffer. This mace sucked the moisture from my mouth. I started to ask him how small a hole, then noticed my father studying me with an odd expression. Glancing down, I made sure I was holding my weapon correctly and everything that should be zipped was zipped. Check and check. Then what? No offense to you, Isabel, but I'd rather my son split up. No offense taken. She saw it, said brightly, then added under the breath, this time. Come ride with me, Matt. Roman motioned me over. That way we can portion out the rookie quotient. Ouch, I should have just walked here. I slid off Izzy's rump, one hand on her tail for balance, and I stomped over to the black stallion. Turk glared at me. Watch your clumsy feet this time. I know how to mount. Thrusting my left boot onto the stirrup, I grabbed Roman's preferred hand and was hauled aboard. Could have fooled me, Turk sniffed. Biting my tongue, I scooted into place behind the saddle. I gripped my mace in one hand and clung to the cantle with the other. Okay, I'm ready. We'll ride hard for the cave. Although I do not like the idea of charging blindly into the maze. Speed is our best weapon for now. Dad screwed his hat lower. Once there, hold up and we'll decide our next move. Isabel? Stay close to El Cid. Allow Ben room to swing. Speaking of swinging, Matt, Roman turned his head enough to catch his grin. I bruise easily. In spite of the dread crawling along my skin like maggots, I laughed weakly. I won't hit you, I promise. You better not, Kurt grumbled. Watch, you don't hit me either. Don't tempt me, I thought. El Cid? Dad gestured with his mace. When you are ready, mi amigo. The stallion tossed his head, mane rising and falling like a white foamed wave. Then with a snort, he leaped into a gallop. The rest of us followed, thundering down the slope on his heels. We hit the valley floor and spread out. Turk zigzagged around the boulders and plunged in and out of shadow ravines. The deeper ones he jumped, almost leaving me behind. My teeth snapped together each time we landed. I wrapped one of my leather saddle ties around my first, hunkered down, and hung on. Bouncing along, I swiveled my head until I was as dizzy, trying to watch all four directions at the same time. Even with the black speed, I felt like a gladiator who had lost a fight and is now waiting for the thumbs down from the emperor. Ow! A fly pinged off my face. Then another. Two more buzzed my left ear. One landed in the corner of my eye. I blinked it away. Roman? I shouted over the wind. I know. Hold on. He shifted in the saddle. Turk! The black saddle skidded to a halt. I pinched into Roman and banged my nose on his back. Elsa and Izzy followed suit, their back legs plowing furrows into the sand. Dust boiled up. Guess the charge blindly into the maze part is over, Ben said. I looked around, wishing I could see through all the boulders. I imagined hundreds of Skinners crouched behind each one, hungry for payback and a meal, with me as the appetizer. My gut did a slow barrel roll. I swallowed the panic down and squeezed my fingers around the mace's haft, leaving sweaty imprints in the leather grip. The horse's breathing sounded loud and raspy in the maze's dead air, but not as loud as my pulse thundering in my ears. Next to me, the sorrel sorted and tossed her head. Izzy, Ben whispered. Chill. Another fly landed in the corner of my mouth. I sputtered and spat it away. I wish Skinners would hurry up and attack just to get it over with. Come on already, Ben muttered, scanning the area. Guess he felt the same way. He held his mace in a white-knuckled grip. A buzzing sound. Then flies appeared out of nowhere. The black pests swarmed back and forth over our heads, the noise more annoying than a hairdryer left on high. Hunching my shoulders, I tried to drown out the hum. I swore I caught movement behind every rock and bush. Under us, Turk pawed the ground, tail whipping my legs. Roman, he pointed his ears at a nearby jumble of boulders. I see it. Heads up, everyone. Something moved in the shadows. The skin on my back crawled up my neck and buried itself in my hair. I raised my mace. Then I laughed. A lone Skinner, only a shade bigger than a beagle, crept into the sunlight. It just stood there, naked and shivering, its black eyes blank. I almost folded to the ground in relief. That's it? One little runt? I did the math. One rusty Skinner versus six of us. Okay, 5.5. But still, easy as falling out of bed. Hey, can I take the first crack at it? Turk tensed. Never a good sign. I peeked over at Dad and El Cid. What's wrong? Eyes wide, the gray flung up its head. Ambush! And that is the end of chapter 8. I'll probably be reading chapter 9 tonight. If I don't, I'm sorry. I'll really try to, but yeah, okay. If you liked it, please subscribe and like. If you have any questions or comments, just throw them in the comments. Okay, see ya. Thanks for listening.